where's the?
So we're going to open the February 26th meeting of the East Long Meadow Planning Board.
Before we get going,
Hold
Robin
on.
needs the recorder.
Yeah. Okay, I need to announce that we are recording this for the minutes and that we are also taping it for LCAT. And I need to ask if anyone else is taping or recording the meeting. Hearing none, we can proceed. First order of business is a continuance of a revocation hearing for Patsy's Restaurant, 600 North Main Street. We have some correspondence relating to that.
I do. We have a letter from Patsy LaCory to the board. Due to a personal dilemma, I gratefully request a postponement of our scheduled meeting on Tuesday, February 26, 2013, regarding the amendment of the special permit. Thank you. Sincerely, Patsy LaCory.
When should we continue this to?
I would say to March 26th.
Can I have a motion to continue the hearing to March 26th at 6 p.m.? Or what time? What else are we doing? No, not 6 p.m.
I would say 7:15, 7
Uh,
o'clock.
We have two things.
The Bruce Hinton has not responded, so I'd say 7 o'clock would be a good bet.
Okay, 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's continued. Now we have a meeting with our zoning review committee.
Great.
Welcome.
Sandra seconded.
If you could introduce yourselves for the tape so everyone knows who's here.
You want us to do it?
No, please.
I'm Marilyn Richards.
I'm Ned Schwartz.
Ty Richards.
Mary Fleehide.
Great. Welcome. Thank you. And you have some articles that you would like us to consider for, and some other discussion you'd like to.
Ned will be our spokesperson for tonight.
Okay.
At least that's what we decided a half hour ago.
Short straw, okay.
Okay.
The first issues that we wanted to at least raise are issues of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be what we submitted were numbers 1 and 3 of these. Number 1, we have been diligently meeting every other week, twice a month. And there are times when it would be helpful if we had some input from the planning board, so we could get some historical context, some intent, and other issues like that, so that when we submit the work, we know that at least it's going to go to the next level and hopefully be of some benefit.
Right.
So instead of shooting in the dark, and again, I don't want to presuppose what the form of communication should be, but in our discussions, I guess what we might like to, at some point, maybe even once a month for 15 minutes, if a member of the planning board could just be with us to respond and to interact both on procedural communication, on when we should be submitting various the work and packages that we've been working on for various sections, and then to give us some feedback perhaps on historical context and issues of that, so we can have a spirited discussion amongst ourselves. But at least it's focused in the right direction. And so we were wondering what we might be able to negotiate with you in terms of having someone represent the board to act as a communication intermediary with us in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Initially, one of the things we have to be careful about is not having 3 members of the board there, which would constitute a quorum, which would be a problem. But originally, the idea was that if we had a member attending regularly, that might inhibit the discussion that you were having, okay? To my recollection, in the year now that I've been chair, I haven't actually received an invitation or even a notification of the meetings. But I think if you'd like to have someone there, if you think it'd be useful, send us an invitation and someone will show up. I think, when do you normally meet?
We usually meet roughly every other Tuesday night.
Tuesday nights, okay.
Which is often possibly on your schedule, so.
Yeah.
it would have
But we can do it on a Wednesday.
We have been meeting Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Yeah, well, we meet, as you know, every other Tuesday, okay, and on a rolling basis. So unless we're in conflict, we can certainly get someone there. And I don't see any problem. All you've got to do is email either Robin or myself, and we can get somebody there.
And this would, we don't need anything all long and drawn out.
Right.
Usually what the issue is we'll have 2 or 3 different zoning issues that we're talking about.
Sure.
And then the 4 of us are talking, well, what was the intent? I mean, we're supposed to be clearing up the intent, but sometimes we're having a challenge doing that when we're a little bit foggy ourselves when we read it, what the intent is.
Right.
So once we know what the intent is, we say, great, and we can improve that.
And I'm not sure, we're much clearer on intent than you are,
Say there's
because
some fogginess on our part as well.
you've got probably the greatest history on your committee.
And I'm the one that's attacked most of the time. If I use that word lovingly.
Right.
The point is
Spirited
that
discussion.
it's spirited discussion.
There your black eyes going.
And we need to remember also that this is a bylaw, it's not the Constitution, okay?
But the problem is,
Yeah.
if you're a stranger coming to town and you're represented by an attorney and you're trying to squeeze something in that may not necessarily supposed
Yeah.
to be there by intent, it's easy to twist a lot of the language in our zoning bylaws, which is what the purpose of our group is.
Exactly, and, you know, Maryland's been on this side of the table, and having been on this side of the table for 5 years, and looking at probably another 5 years coming up, I'd be real happy to sit down with you guys anytime and talk about this. It's not that we have some major insight, okay, necessarily that you don't, but I think that we certainly deal with this on a bi-weekly basis of people coming in with projects, and also with townspeople approaching us everywhere, from calling us up to stopping us at Stop and Shop, and, you know, telling us what the problems are with the town. So I think that when you think it's appropriate, okay, because again, I don't want us to inhibit you or to overly direct you, but when you think it's appropriate, email us, email me, email Robin, tell us when you're meeting and you'd like to have someone there, and we can get somebody there.
All right, that takes care of number 1.
Oh,
Number 2.
could I make a comment?
Please.
Before we
Yeah,
move
yeah.
on to number 2. Historically, my experience with, even previous amendments to the bylaw where we went through the 1991 revision, during that time, there was a subcommittee that was a selection from the planning board. A planning board member sat on that committee, as well as the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Now, I know that things have evolved in a different direction with PVPC.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing now is that we really, we are an extension of the planning board, and we really welcome involvement. I would be happy if there was a member that was desirous of serving with us and coming to every meeting, so there'd be continuity rather than waiting for us to invite you when an issue comes up that we can't deal with right away. We could then, or if there was a representative on our committee, that person, if there was something controversial or of major importance, he could then bring it back to the next board meeting for clarification with the rest of the board. It wouldn't be like the individual had any more authority.
Ex officio.
As an ex officio, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we're struggling with. I mean,
Yeah.
we spent an entire evening discussing a title, and it was, it was a very stressful evening.
We don't need our hands held. This is just,
Sure.
a little bit of structure from time to time when we have a question.
Sure.
That's all.
And it should be a two-way street, so if there's something that comes up in town that would mandate or be of import for us to look at a bylaw out of sequence,
Mhm.
because of something that's has come up, it would be nice if we knew about that, so we
Sure.
could hit that quickly and help you out a little bit.
So how does the board feel about, Ralph?
Just a quick comment. I'm not sure, being on both the zoning review committee and now on the planning board, my thought was maybe to set it up where once a month, either one of the members or a specific member would go to their meeting for the first half an hour, or longer if they needed, answer any questions. That way there, at least in between, they're working on their own doing it so that we don't have undue influence on where it goes, but yet we're there just in case there's anything.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm not adverse to attending a meeting to try to
Senator?
facilitate what they're trying to do.
If it's gonna help them go through the process a little quicker, then I think we should do it.
I mean, I would actually prefer if we could rotate that responsibility on the board, because
Probably a
that
good
way,
idea.
everybody gets exposed to your deliberations, and you get exposed to all the members, okay? And as
We know
I,
Ralph pretty good.
you know,
We could bring the questions back and forth.
yeah, and,
Between the two.
and boards need to work together, okay, to a certain extent. But if boards, everybody thought alike, we wouldn't need 5 people here.
It's not a problem. in our
Okay.
committee.
You know, so I think that getting a diversity of opinions from this board injected into your work would be great, okay? Rather than having a single gatekeeper, if you will, who's interpreting everything, you know, both ways. And again, if you will give Robin your schedule, we will work out that somebody can be there, okay, at least once a month. Does that make sense, Robin?
Sure.
And, you know, provided you can avoid scheduling on planning board nights.
Yeah, that would be a,
And, you know, you can easily find out when planning board nights are, because we're every 2 weeks, like clockwork, from starting tonight, with the exception
I was
of,
just gonna say, yeah.
with the exception of election nights, when we don't meet. And hopefully you guys don't meet, because people get involved with elections, and it's not really legal to hold hearings or other significant meetings on election days, because it could prevent somebody from going to the polls or making a choice between going to the polls and coming to a meeting, and we don't want to do that. So I'm all in favor of increasing communication, okay? So let's start by communicating when you're meeting, you know when we're meeting, and let's get some folks to show up, and, you know, I'm happy. It indicates that you're well enough along that you've got a lot to talk about with us, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Okay, Number 3 on our agenda is
Yeah.
also communication, but I'd like to do that second because it complements what we just discussed. We, in our discussions, thought it might be helpful to you, and we're just looking for your input, whether or not it might be helpful for us to participate in some way in the presentation of these modified bylaws at the town meeting, so that if questions come up, we can perhaps go into more depth and give a better explanation of why it developed the way it did and why it's being presented the way it is.
Mhm.
And we thought it would be helpful for us if we could in some way participate based on whatever you feel is appropriate to help with the presentation of any amended bylaws that we worked on.
Yeah. And
I'm definitely in for that
Two
one.
people shaking hands.
Yeah.
I didn't think that would be a problem.
Oh, my God.
Actually, I think that there's a couple things to think about here. If the planning board is actually sponsoring and supporting the article, then I think it's appropriate for the planning board to get up and present the article, if you will. At least, you know, officially present the article and give a quick overview. If there are then questions about the article that we don't have the answers to, we think you do, we can certainly ask you to, you know, speak to it. And certainly as citizens, you have a right to get up and speak to the articles, you know, and indicate whether or not you indicate that you were one of the ones that generated it. But I think that the actual presentation of the article should fall to the board, planning board, and that we should look to you for support for in-depth discussion if there are areas that we're not totally clear on. Now, hopefully, by the time we get to town meeting, we'll understand the articles well enough that we're in pretty good shape. But I know town meeting, and lots of articles, a lot of questions come up. And the nasty ones we'll send to you. No, I don't mean it that way, but seriously, you don't understand. If we don't understand it, or if we think you add something to it, then we can throw it to a member of your group to amplify on it. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and not necessarily for you guys, but I've seen this happen. The one that stands out in my mind is when we got the money for the Brown Farm. And a group that was not officially part of the town government got up and gave this dog and pony show that raised certain expectations that have not been fulfilled and probably won't be fulfilled. So again, any resident of the town could get up and talk. There's nothing to say you can't. But I think it's better, and also in terms of pushing the articles, it's better if the board gets up and says, yes, we support this, and this is what we're proposing, and this is why. And if nobody asks any questions, like, you shut up and let the vote go. If the questions come along and we feel that you can add something to it, we would then turn it over to you, okay, and let you come up and say something. And I think that might be the, Marilyn?
It's important, though, that I think the committee should be recognized.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a project that we've been seriously
Yes.
taking on for, gosh, when did we
Two
start?
2 years?
Almost.
Yeah.
And not only that, but, I think it's important for the citizens of East Long Meadow to know that fellow citizens are
Yes.
working on
Agreed.
these bylaws. And so therefore, even though we present as a committee,
Yeah,
we're not just being allowed to speak up at town meeting because we're citizens of East Long Meadow.
Right.
We're speaking up because we've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort
yes,
figuring out what would be the best way for this bylaw to be written.
right. And I think that we should certainly recognize you folks when we present these particular articles, okay? Saying that this article was developed by a committee of these folks, and once it's actually been presented to the moderator, it was put together by this committee of these folks, and we thank you for your efforts, and here's what they're proposing, and here's why the planning board supports it, okay? And then if we get questions and we feel that you've got you got a lot more knowledge because you've worked a lot more on it than we have, we could then ask, and I'd ask you before town meeting to tell us who would like to speak to which question, okay, so that we ask the right person to come forward and do it that way. I've been in enough town meetings now. I've been here, well, I'm not as long as most of you folks, but I've been here since 1979. It's a lot of town meetings.
I beat you.
To get some feel for the dynamic of town meeting, okay, and knowing when to talk and when to shut up, okay. And I think that many of these are not really controversial. They're housekeeping, if you will, or
We tried to do that in
yeah.
terms of reading and making common words apply
Right.
instead of disparate words.
Exactly.
And trying to remain, but there are times when we have to get into something substantive.
Right.
That's when having your input, at least from the board, would be certainly helpful.
Yeah, and I, as I say, if I feel that, if we feel that we would like to, we need to have a more explicit explanation of how you got there, you're the ones to get up and talk about it. And all I'm saying is to make sure that things go smoothly, if you would tell us in advance who would be speaking to which article, then it's easy to say, if somebody comes with the question, for that question, I'm gonna ask Ed Schwartz to come up and address that, okay? As opposed to saying, would someone from the committee like to come
Yeah,
up
that's
and
fine.
address
So
that?
we would be glad to meet with you prior to the town meeting
Yeah.
for two reasons. To do that, to also answer any questions you people may have in terms of how we got to where we got it.
Yeah, exactly.
If we don't cover that in these sessions, at
Right.
least when we get down to the nitty-gritty, at least you can ask us questions so we can be prepared.
Absolutely.
We'll give you a reason why we think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what we need to do. You have to go into town meeting prepared. If you don't, you get shot down. We know that.
We found
Well, that's what happened last time. We weren't prepared. We thought it was gonna be easy. We thought it was simplistic enough that everybody would understand it. Only to come to find out, it wasn't perceived by the town as that, and it was
Yeah.
voted down.
That was the tattoo issue.
Well, there was, among other things too,
Yeah.
there was the home-based office or something like that,
That's
I know
why
we tried that. and
We
that
haven't
was,
addressed that since
Okay.
we submitted that, so.
Yeah.
So I think with our, us presenting it and you backing us up with the support, obviously you're putting a lot more time in it than we are as a board, I definitely think that would be beneficial.
All right.
That'd be great.
So I think
Be
we have
great.
consensus, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two is just to see what we have submitted. We submitted a package a year ago.
Yep.
And then we
Yeah, I
submitted
know we've got a couple
recently
we talked
the
about.
big box
Right,
bylaws for both the industrial and the business areas, and also the office and the home.
yep,
And we did the fence.
That was
We
in the
submitted
original
that.
package a year ago.
Yeah.
And so we're here to see what procedures we need to go through in order to have these things moved up to the next level.
yep.
And so I don't know how you want
Yeah.
to handle it, but we
Well,
have submitted them, and we're here for your conversation.
Let's start off with fences, because we have discussed this one, and one of the issues that, stupid issue, what's a fence and what's a wall?
Yeah, language.
Okay? They're defined similarly in the dictionary, and yet they're treated differently in the bylaw. Okay? A wall typically is solid, but not necessarily. Okay, I've seen walls made out of open work. Fences are typically open, but sometimes they're solid. They're sometimes different materials and sometimes not. If we're gonna make a distinction between the requirements for them, then we need to know what they are. Did you discuss that when you went through
In some
this?
degree, I think is that why we came up with the quarter?
That was there
Solid?
before.
No,
Yeah.
that was, we basically took what the bylaw already had written.
Right.
That was our marching order.
Right.
To read it for clarification, try to make it more user-friendly. We went through and, wanted to more specifically address corner lots, which
Right.
is addressed in the bylaw, but in different sections. So
Right.
If a resident went to the bylaw, they would be able to look and see what basically was expected of them as a homeowner or a business owner, depending on where the fence was going to be located.
Right.
Even before going to the building inspector. So we really, there was no definition of wall beforehand. I sort of thought of a fence being a thinner piece as opposed to a wall being more solid. I mean, it's very, very, very simplistic, but, I mean, we all know what a wall looks like.
We think we do.
Regarding that issue, we pretty much dealt with quarter solid in height.
Right.
And we really didn't define either one of the two, as you know, either one of the two, but we dealt with, is it quarter solid and how high is it?
Well, we would not be adverse if we came up with something in terms of thickness and percentage of openness that might help clarify that more. I don't think any of us would be.
Now, we had talked briefly about walls doing it by material, whereas where walls,
Here's the definition
Would you-
in here that you must have put together.
Yeah, would you
Right.
like,
We did talk
yeah.
about it.
if you don't mind?
please read,
What we were looking at is defining wall as an upright structure comprised of, but not limited to, stone, masonry, or concrete material serving to enclose, divide, or protect an area. What my thought was on this is, we're looking to define, in the zoning book, it clumps the two together, fences or walls. I think what they're looking at is trying to say, as a perimeter fence, that both of these fit into this category, whether you're gonna call this a wall because it's made out of masonry, or whether you're gonna call it a fence because it's made out of wood. That's my perception of where the bylaw is coming from. A fence is basically to distinguish a border or to enclose an area. That's the definition, we already have that. So I think adding a definition of a wall that basically just says, it's also masonry, stone, concrete,
or similar materials.
or similar material. I think what that does is just says, listen, we understand it could be both.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that we allow walls, which are solid, as long as they're not over 4 feet, to be in front of a house, which makes sense. There's a lot of houses that have walls across the front of the yard. And it's, in New England, that's a fairly New England thing, a stone wall, in front of your house.
Actually, in the front of the house is just the opposite. It's 1/4 solid. No fence more than 1/4 solid or 4 feet in height.
No, it said, this article says no fence more than 1/4 solid or a wall greater than 4 feet in height.
Yeah, so the wall's gotta be less than 4 feet high.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be
Exactly.
solid.
Right. So the thing is, how do you distinguish a 4-foot-high wall from a 4-foot-high solid fence? And that's where the materials of construction come in, okay? I mean, the wall in this room is thin, if you will. It's called the wall. It's right here. It's probably about 5 inches thick, you know? Whereas if you think of a wall in landscaping, you're thinking of something that's probably 6 inches thick and made out of stone or brick or something like, or, you know, concrete block. And I understand that that's a fine landscape feature to have in front of a house. It doesn't, the intent was, if I'm right, Robin, going back, was to avoid the prison wall syndrome driving down a street,
Correct.
where every house is protected by a 10-foot wall and you look like you're in a tunnel. Okay, you know, a low wall in front of a house looks great, and we have a lot of them in town. So I think what you've got here, I think we discussed this, that what
Yeah.
you've got here for the bylaw looks great with the addition of a definition of a wall. And we would put that in as a separate, or as part of the article to,
Yes, the
Yeah.
way I did it was for the
Yeah.
articles, to keep the cost down if nothing else.
Yeah.
Is any type of definition.
Right.
Is one article. That
Okay.
includes the other articles that the review committee
Yeah.
has submitted.
Right. Okay.
So wall is a part of that. So if you just, you know, the fence bylaw to be changed, and then just go to the definitions for a wall.
yeah. I mean, I gotta think about this from the point of view, people are gonna come in front of us and say, oh, this fence is not a fence, it's a wall, even though it's made out of wood, you know, it's, Ned, you have a point?
I was just remembering our conversations,
Yeah.
and the only other thing I think we talked about was the distance from the lot line.
Right.
And how that might impact emergency services in terms of fire access. If there's only 6 inches on either side, they'd only leave a foot hurdle for fire truck access. And I don't know if we ever resolved that, or, but I thought we should at least inform you of that when we discussed that.
Well, that was something we actually talked about last year also, and we never came to a conclusion about that. Because you could have 2 fences, 6 inches off, 6 inches off, a foot between the two, and that's gonna look like a dog's breakfast between those 2 fences.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's not reflecting it, but I thought it would be
Yeah.
helpful if we at least informed you. And that was part of our discussion.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, a lot of this is neighbors versus neighbors. I mean, let's face it. But the 6 inches, I think the whole purpose of that originally was to make sure that you weren't encroaching, that you had at least 6 inches so that you weren't actually building on your neighbor's lot, okay? And that's a real issue in a lot of cases, where somebody builds their fence and they haven't had it surveyed, and they end up putting it on somebody else's property.
I think the old bylaws, it was 3 feet.
No,
So, no,
actually,
it's different types of fences.
Different type
Right.
of
Yeah.
fences.
Different types
So I think
of
6
fences.
feet
The
over,
first
some
word-
stockade fence.
Yeah.
Right.
may I, Mr.
So
Chairman?
trying
Sure,
to
please
consolidate
do.
everything, that was, you know,
The first section in the old bylaw, 3.302, is all fences must be at least 6 inches from any lot line. And then it goes on to talk about, you know, if it's 4 foot in height, more than 1/4 solid, then it has to be 3 feet from the lot line.
Yeah.
That may cover the issues with
Yeah,
emergency access, okay.
yeah. And typically,
And by the way, it'd be nice to clean that up, because,
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that practical to have 2 fences?
6 inches apart.
Well,
Yeah, actually 12 inches, 6 and
Yeah,
6,
right,
12
right,
inches
right.
apart.
Yeah.
I mean, that really,
in most cases, there's usually one fence, and it's whoever put
well,
it up
that's what it
first.
should be.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
And
I mean, if
One
you
might
wanna,
put a
if
chain
you wanna
link in
follow
there.
the letter of the law,
Yeah.
it really, you know, is.
But, you know, that's a minimum. You can put your fence further back if you want to, okay? And if.
What do you mean by through the back?
Further
Further
back.
back.
Further back.
Property.
Further back.
Further
Oh.
back.
Or
It doesn't have
approach.
to be, you can put it 3 feet away from the lot line. You can put it 6 feet away from the lot line. It's, the 6 inches is a minimum.
Yeah, but the
But
point,
most people
the point
wanna
that
have
we
their
have is,
backyard.
Yeah.
is most people don't want 2 fences in their backyard.
Right.
A foot apart.
Right. And so unless you don't like, if your neighbor's got his fence up first, unless you don't like it,
Well,
Yeah.
some might still do that, because some might face it a different way.
Right.
yeah.
You know, they want the nice side facing their property.
And as far as the 6 inches, some people only have 10 feet on the side of their house. So if you put it 3 feet, now they've only got 7, they can't get a
Right.
vehicle back
They
there.
don't
Yeah.
wanna
So
interrupt their
s-
yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 6 inches, I mean, that's, that's
Yeah.
just to keep people from encroaching on other people's property.
I mean, you-
Unfortunately, there are people that put fences like that because they don't get along.
yeah.
So this is a typical reason why we'd love to have you at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
Just for a few minutes,
Right.
I mean,
Sure. No,
once you
no.
say to us, no, leave the intent exactly the way it is, we say, okay, fine, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
And then we'll make sure it's read,
Yeah.
reads well.
And from an emergency access viewpoint, police and fire access places usually from the street, okay? They're not gonna be walking between the fences to get to a property.
You know, and the fire department has said if there's an issue, they'll take down whatever's in
Yeah,
the
they'll do whatever they gotta do.
They
Yeah.
don't care whether
Yeah,
it's
they'll
a
try-
car or a
They'll
truck.
drive right over
They will
it.
drive right over it, yeah.
Yeah.
And that,
And they will
Well, we'd like
trespass
to
if they
have
have
them
to.
go
Yes.
through one fence instead of 2, 12 inches apart.
Yeah,
Oh, they will.
they will. But seriously, I like the improvements on the corner and the diagrams that you've got. I think that's a big improvement.
Well, that was Ralph.
Yeah.
He should take credit for that. Did you
Stand up
change
and bow.
anything on this, Ralph? I mean, I was under the impression that you
That's
were
how you
making.
won the
have.
election.
the streets,
But see, it's exactly what I
What?
have.
no, it doesn't say street.
Yes, it does.
No, it says street, but what I did is I added a line, and then on the corner lot, I made it actually look like a corner. Marilyn?
You're on the wrong one.
Well, I've got the one you gave me.
It's a-
This is mine.
I
Yeah.
just did
This
this
is-
this week.
See right here.
Oh, got it. So you just completed the street.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
just so that it
Right.
jumps out a little
Right,
bit
well,
more.
that's perfect.
So then-
No.
Actually, I think, George, you have a better one.
This one?
Yeah.
No,
I do.
what's,
I know exactly
where's
what
the
it
other
is.
one?
Oh,
that we
no,
just
no,
gave?
the one with Pages Way?
One Kingston Way, you mean?
Well, we put a little car on the
A little
street
car,
too,
no, I
just
think
to help
that's a
them
little,
out.
no, I think
We
we
called
can
it
leave that out.
Kingston Way.
We can leave that out.
Stage landscaping sign in the front yard.
Yeah, absolutely illegal.
Next got a sign over there too.
Right.
Across the street.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no. So that, I think that the fence one is, with the definition, is good to go. How does the
Okay.
board feel? Yeah.
With the definition of the wall.
The wall, yeah.
All right.
Just so that,
Do you want us to add the definition of the wall, or is that what you, or
We-
you?
we- we'll-
That's in a
we'll do
different
that.
article.
we'll,
Oh, okay,
we'll do
good.
that in the article, so that, in a separate article, so that it's in there. It's, again, your committee will finish its work, this board will be supplanted by another board 10 years from now. And they need to be able to look at what's written in the bylaw, okay? And it should be as explicit as possible, so that it's not, gee, I remember that we discussed this and this is what we meant, because that doesn't really fly. And if you've watched the meetings, and Marilyn's been on this board, people will come in, as you say, and try to make this, to bend this to whatever meets their own personal needs versus what the intent is. So the more we put in explicitly of what the intent is, which is why the definition of wall, the better off future boards will be.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
With the letter A, a permit from the building commissioner,
Yeah.
do you want to add that a plan is required to show where the lot lines are? That's what the biggest issue has been over the past, I'd say, 4 years. Fence people come in and don't provide a plan, and
Don't
The
all building
fences-
permits require plans? No.
They would try that with the decks.
We tried that with that. Years ago, when you built a new house, it was required.
exactly.
Since then, it's not required. I don't know why, but I think it should be for a matter of record, A.
Yeah.
For historical reasons, B, so the town has something to see. And fences are one of those items where a lot of people put them up on other people's property, and that's where the conflict starts.
Right.
So whether we require it or not, I don't know I think we should require it, but are we asking too much? And
I mean, the only problem
I think it's a good thing, it protects both.
I do too, but it's an
Absolutely.
expense.
And
Right.
Yeah,
It's
the
expense
issue
nonetheless.
is, it's a significant expense.
Well, the other side of the coin, you can
It's
just
gonna-
phrase it as if the homeowner puts a fence up in the wrong spot, it's his responsibility to take it down and put it back up again in the right spot. So in
Well-
other words, if a neighbor comes by and says, hey, wait a minute, I think your fence is on my property, I'm gonna get a surveyor here to double check this, and if that's the case, the person that filled out the applicant is responsible for correcting it.
But why should the abutter or
Right.
the neighbor have to
Have
go
to
through
pay
that
for that.
expense?
He might do it anyway.
Yeah, well, theoretically, we
Well,
have
I see
fence
what you're saying,
viewers.
'cause if it's done with a survey right off the front,
That's
there's no
right.
question.
Here-
Well, isn't that,
need a
isn't that
survey.
in your I mean, your plot plan is in,
Yeah, but I know,
Yeah, but a
No.
plot plan and a survey are
It's
two different
totally
things.
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
but wouldn't you be able to tell in your plot?
No.
Not accurately
No.
enough, not.
Because we were able to tell
Yeah.
that our neighbor's fence was on our yard.
A lot of times, the boundary markers are lost.
And or moved.
They use iron
Yeah.
pins
Mhm.
in the ground. They can be removed or lost, okay? And resetting a corner pin can cost you $1,000, okay? Because the surveyor's got to come out and establish the benchmark, which may be 3 lots down, and then measure up to where it's supposed to be and get all the angles right and so on. So in a lot of the older lots in town, those boundary markers don't exist. Now, in newer subdivisions, they should be there and easy to find. But I know on my lot, there's only 1 of 4 pins still there, okay? And my lot's not that old, it's early 70s, so.
The issue with the bylaw without the plan,
Yeah.
you know, without, what did the planning board request recently for plans for something that was defeated at town meeting?
It was basically,
For decks.
for decks.
yeah.
For decks.
Yeah, and it was, at the discretion of the building commissioner. And that was the only thing that the planning board decided to change, was that a plan was required, because there were so many that
I
were
know,
built
I
on
know.
somebody else's property.
Because I look at what's here,
Mm.
that we would like to go forward with at town meeting, and it's really mostly what we already have in our bylaw. There are a few
Right.
changes. But add to that the fact that we have had inconsistent enforcement of this bylaw for years and years. Not since 1962, when the bylaw was created, but over a period of years where people have become comfortable with where their fences are located, and they're incorrect. And so that in of itself is gonna create some issues with this bylaw at town meeting. If it doesn't pass, then we're back to where we were previously with an enforcement issue, rather than trying to make it the bylaw more clear for our people. Where I'm going with this is to require a plan, which I think would be great. Is that going to be the make or break thing with trying to upgrade, improve the bylaw?
I really think that it's gonna be a point of opposition because of the cost.
Exactly.
To provide a plan stamped by a surveyor is gonna cost at least $1,000.
Good. At some points, it might cost more than the fence.
Yeah.
Well, that.
Okay, good. I see exactly what you're saying and
Yeah.
where you're going, but the other side of the coin is, what do you do about the fact that some guy thinks he's got it in the right
Yeah.
spot and he doesn't, and he's not trying to be adversarial, but he just accidentally had his guy put it up in the wrong spot?
Well, there's 2 things. One is, we're supposed to have fence viewers in this town, whose job it is to make sure that fences are where they're supposed to be.
That's correct.
Okay?
But
we-
they don't know,
but-
if they don't have a plan, they can't tell.
And secondly, the fence companies who do most of the fencing, not too many people do their own fences, is supposed to know where they're putting it.
But how do they go about it without a survey?
Right.
Well, that's,
Because the homeowner walks out and says, here's the lot line right here. The
Yeah.
guy goes, okay, I'll measure 6 inches back and put the fence up.
Right.
yeah, that's the problem. But if they're responsible, they'll locate the corner pins and shoot the
Which
angle.
just
But
about
if
gets you
there's
back
one
to a
corner
survey.
Yeah.
But the key piece is the building permit with the building inspector.
Right.
And my feeling is and it's my understanding that it's really a requirement now, it's just that people aren't going to the building inspector. It's not a
It's not
requirement
a
now?
requirement, it's up to his discretion.
His discretion again, okay. So if the building permit becomes part of the bylaw, then hopefully most of the people will go to the building inspector as appropriate, get the building permit.
Right.
And then if there's any issue with placement, that it would be his discretion as to where the fence goes.
Correct.
As,
No.
no?
He can't, how can he if he doesn't have a plan?
Well,
first
but
of all,
I
the
mean,
building
in his
inspector's-
discretion, then he should ask for a plan.
Which
I
gets
know,
you right
I
back
know
to the
it's-
survey.
Yeah, back to the survey.
Paying for the
Neighbor to
survey
see,
at that point.
But
Yeah.
if it's
Should be
that
the
close to
person
the
who's
lot
looking
line,
at it.
then he would request and say, I need a
How does he know
definitive
how close it
section.
is to the lot line
Well,
without a plan?
we don't know what the
Right.
building inspector is gonna do. Okay, the building inspector has a lot of discretion under state law to, as to what he chooses to require. You know, I'm hearing that putting a building permit including a plan, require a building permit from the building commissioner. How would you word that?
Well, now you're asking town residents to change a bylaw that's gonna cost them more money.
I mean, I understand
It's
that.
not gonna fly.
I
So we tried
understand
that
that.
with the decks and.
Yeah.
Right, with the
Well,
decks.
And once again,
And they
we
were
also
very
don't want
adversarial.
people to insure
Yeah.
money too,
Yeah.
but you can certainly see the issue.
Yeah.
There's
There's
certain-
definitely an issue.
Oh,
There's
definitely an issue. I mean, the building
right.
inspector's not a surveyor.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Nor is the homeowner,
Correct.
Right.
and or the fence guy.
For argument's sake, I mean, this has happened to me, somebody put a fence on the wrong piece of property, you come to the town, you complain, the building inspector says yes. I can ask them to move it, if they don't, it becomes a civil matter, then the attorneys get involved. Because the building inspector only
You don't
has
want
so
that
much.
either.
I agree, but the building inspector only has so much power as a building official. He's not an attorney, he can only do so much as far as enforcement, he can write threatening letters, but in the end, if the person decides not to move it, it does become a civil matter. You know, I've been told that by two different attorneys.
Yeah.
It seemingly makes sense that the building inspector should just check with the neighbor to see if there's any debate, and if there's an issue, then a more formal process could be implemented.
I agree with you, Ned, 100%. What makes sense and what happens are not the same thing.
Correct.
Okay?
I get a letter from both of them.
But by
It should be,
requiring,
it should,
by requiring a building permit, okay, at least on the application for the building permit, the applicant has got to assert where that fence is going to be.
Exactly.
So the applicant is going on record as saying, this fence is on my property and it's the proper distance back, okay? If the applicant is in error, it then falls to the applicant to correct the error because they've made the assertion. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I know I'm talking like one.
But we just talked about it being a civil matter.
Yeah.
I'm not adverse to the
And it is a
language I think
civil
you
matter.
proposed earlier either. If, you know, if you choose to put your fence on, if you don't meet the criteria, you put it on somebody else's property, it's your obligation to take it down. I mean, I don't know if
That
that's.
makes the homeowner really careful to make
twice.
sure he's doing the right thing.
Exactly, exactly.
And I guess I would ask town council, is that something we could write in for language on the bylaw?
I'm sorry.
That if somebody puts up a fence on somebody else's property, it's their responsibility to take it down and or pay for anything, any remedies
Well, it is,
as
but
needed.
unfortunately,
That's-
they
Why
go to
can't
the ZBA, so it still costs the neighbor money
I know. My
to
question
file a
is,
complaint.
do we put that language in with the bylaw?
why can't the neighbor just take the fence down?
I know, if it's on your property, you actually own the fence.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your fence.
I mean, again, that's, what's common sense and what's right
It's
isn't
true.
always the same thing.
Okay, it sounds, let's not beat this one to death.
I also
Mr.
get
Chairman,
concerned
may I-
Yeah.
about putting all kinds of things in bylaws that make it an enforceable
Harder to
nightmare.
understand.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Let's.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Can I,
You know,
Yep.
We're
Make a
Just have a
questioning-
question on,
yeah, but can I make a comment first?
sure.
Rather than beat, we'll take your comment, but rather than beat this one to death, okay? I think this is something that, obviously we're gonna have to hold a hearing on this. Prior to the hearing, we should get the opinion of town council, okay? As to these questions of legality, of who is responsible for what, and how it might be written to better ensure that the fence is put where it's supposed to be. Okay? And I think we need to hold a hearing and hear what people who are concerned about this come in, if anyone comes in and says, you know, about the way it's written. I agree with several other people here that requiring a survey, which is pretty pricey, to locate a fence could be enough to defeat the whole thing. And I'm concerned about that. And I'm not one who's in favor of putting onerous burdens on residents simply because I want to put a fence up, you know?
Is there a way to word it where an obvious point of where they're gonna put the fence up, say you're just putting a small little fence up next to your house or something, and there's nothing there, but if it encroaches to a property line or a setback of some sort, can that be added into it and have just a permit just for that?
Or do we just need to put a sentence in here that says that the property owner is responsible for,
Any setbacks or
For-
proper placement of the
for the
fence?
proper placement of the fence? Okay, and
And
let,
then you have someone who buys a house that has the fence already erected,
yeah.
and then you find out when the next door neighbor also moves in, that the fence is in the wrong spot, and, you know, it becomes.
That should come under inspection.
Yeah, that'll come under inspection, also, a
Really?
survey will be done every
Should.
time
For
someone
fence-
buys
for
a
fence
house,
Good- a good
and they can
inspector.
check it against that
But
survey,
that's a
which they're
mortgage
paying for
survey.
anyway.
Which, well, it should be, it doesn't have to be done,
But we're getting into too many
Yeah,
what
ways.
ifs.
yeah.
And I see where you're coming from.
Right.
But he's right too, the mortgage survey will be done, I've seen fences,
You know,
yeah,
we
but they're
were-
accurate
we were
enough to know when
putting
fences are.
Fences
No.
up for years without plans.
Yep.
I think that the first step is to make the language more clear for individuals who are looking at the bylaw. And in terms of the legal stuff, building enforcement, enforcement of existing illegal fences, I mean, that's not within the jurisdiction of this board anyway.
Correct.
Okay. Ralph, you had a quick comment?
I do. Marilyn, if you don't mind, the last time I was on the committee and we spoke, we had done up a final draft. Do you have that?
The final draft for?
For the fence?
Yes.
Because I know we had made a couple changes, and I
Yes.
think I inadvertently gave the wrong one to Robin. And it's a small change, but
Let me make sure if this is the same, I can give you the whole thing if it
I
is.
know, I've got the ones from you, but I don't have a
I'm-
date.
Okay.
I'm just curious.
What are you looking for?
We turned it
This is what he's
into
talking
a
about
positive,
here.
any fence that is more than 1/4 solid.
Put that in there.
Yeah, I have that,
That-
but what's the date
I know.
of it?
That was
Oh,
the last one that we did,
was,
correct?
March,
I don't blame 'em.
we were here on
But
February
I'm-
14th, and this was,
later
And the
than-
one,
It's good for yourself.
this, I gave you this later, but I pulled it up
this is March
incorrectly.
18th.
Oh my God,
It's not even so hard.
all right, so which one is the one you want me to use?
This one, I believe this is the one, that way there, right at the top, before we do
Well, the
anything.
board doesn't have this one.
Well, I'm dancing around that.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong piece.
Now, this is a subject to a building permit, that doesn't say that they require one. That's a big difference right
Well,
there.
Yep.
that's what we added originally, after
Well, we-
meeting with you, but that can be changed.
Well,
Yeah, I don't mind this language, like I said. I'm just thinking we went to an affirmative, any fence, instead of no fence.
Oh, I heard about that. I'm not ready
I mean,
yet.
that's quite a bit of difference.
What?
This language compared to this language.
Well, this is the language, this is pretty close to what we had.
Yeah,
This is the
that
one Ralph
was,
gave me.
Okay, we,
All right.
The language is different, George.
okay, then we'll, I think,
You wanna keep
I think we're in agreement
I got it.
that we want to go
I just gotta
forward
look.
with the fence bylaw, that we need to have a hearing, obviously, to get some public input on it,
I was in another day.
and that, so we don't have the final wording here before us, we can't, we can't really let the whole board see what it is and comment on it, so I think we'll have to defer that, but we've got time to do that, okay? The other article that you have here is the private home office or studio.
Okay.
Go to that next.
Yeah, let's do that, because we do have another hearing at 7:15.
Okay, our
So-
overall objective for the, I think it's 3.09,
Yeah,
was to maintain the integrity of our residential districts, the way
Mhm.
they've historically have been shown, yet at the same time acknowledge a clear social trend that people are working more and more out of their home, and with the increased technology, that trend is only going to increase. So what we tried to do, and we looked at the bylaw that was voted down, and we tried to take an approach that looked at the effect of the office in the home, without trying to define what is okay and what is not okay, because we personally couldn't come up with an answer why a photographer versus a music teacher, and we thought we should get out of the business of defining what's allowed and what's not allowed, but look to what's the impact of somebody working out of his or her home, and what do we need to do to protect the integrity of a residential district. And so we eventually, after a lot of spirited conversation, we looked at we looked at the surrounding communities to see what they did, and we kind of plucked out the best options in terms of what the impact would be. And so we took it from an approach of what's the impact, and so our final result there is a compilation of that process. And so what we're trying to do is not to create traffic, not to create signs, anything like that, but still not to try to dictate what a person can do within the confines of his or her home, as long as there's no manifestation of noise, nuisance, extra traffic, signage, or whatever the case may be. So that's the background, and if you have any questions, I think we can certainly respond.
The only question I have immediately is on G. Oh, no, G is good, G is good. I missed that went from a period to a comma, so I got it there.
The only thing we added was the waste and the water usage. We just thought that might be important to keep that within residential parameters, so that, this is where, again, having a committee member there might have helped, because the only thing we come up with is why you originally banned photography, is that they would be dumping chemicals into the system. And we could certainly see a desire not to do that. So that's why we added that, again, without having any input from the committee.
Yeah. I see what you got there, and it does simplify it significantly. The major, I think the major thing is, where are we here? You've got that does not generate additional pedestrian or vehicular traffic.
Right.
But did we keep in the provision that you're not allowed to have clients or customers come to the?
We talked about that. You might, yeah.
We felt it was just hard to differentiate between a social visitor and a business visitor. And if somebody comes over to your house on a rare occasion and there's no increase in traffic, foot or vehicular, then who are we to decide that, how are we going to start defining that type of situation? Again, we're looking at the manifestation of the activity. And as long as there's no additional noticeable traffic, foot or vehicular, it really shouldn't matter in that regard.
How do you enforce it?
And
I mean,
what's
I know
the
exactly
intent
where you're coming. How do you enforce it?
Well, what I'm thinking is there are, and I'll take your comment in a minute, Ralph. There are businesses where clients coming to the place of the business is incidental to it, okay?
And that was one of the issues that was a sticking point at town meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Is totally, I mean, people don't normally come there, they normally go to the other person's place. They, a lot of people, the one we'll look at tonight, I think, plan events off-site and then go to the off-site place to conduct the event. But then there are businesses which, by their inherent nature, require clients to come to the business. So if someone is going to people's houses to dress their hair, then it's very rarely that someone's going to come there to have that service done. If someone is setting up a studio in their house to dress hair, then it would be expected that all the clients would be coming to the house. And there's a real difference between those two. And we're trying to avoid the second. The problem I have with no additional pedestrian vehicular traffic is, in most cases, we don't have a baseline. We don't know what the pedestrian and vehicular traffic is now, and so we're in no position to say it's increased.
Except know in terms of the impact of a residential, if you had, I can't even remember, there was a neighborhood where there was a company that all the workers were coming and parking their trucks in the road. If all of a sudden you have 15 cars parked in the road every day, bingo, there's something going on that's not, you know,
Well,
in tune with the residential district.
that may or may not be. There's a residence that I'm aware of that up until recently has had maybe 10 cars parked there almost every morning, which is not a business. I believe it's like a mother's group. Okay, so you know it's. I would prefer to look at the business model, if you will.
Business what?
The business model,
Okay.
okay, of the business being proposed, to decide whether or not that additional traffic would be there.
Item A talks about if a business certificate is required,
Yeah.
that the applicant needs to come before the planning board. Wouldn't that be the vehicle with which to sort of put in play what is permissible or not permissible at that location based on what you're being told? And if the business is substantive enough to require a business certificate, it was the committee's feeling that it would be substantive enough for the individual to pass muster with the planning board.
I have a question on A. It says an approval. What's an approval? We don't have
All right, so then the
An
word, we can
approval
change that word.
process.
A waiver of site plan, whatever
Okay,
it is that
we
you do.
do as a waiver of site
Well,
plan.
that's generally what you do.
Yeah,
We can choose to waive
But
this.
you, like when I came in for mine, I had to get an approval because I had to, confirm the fact that my office was attached.
Right.
Versus being non-attached. So when I got done answering all of your questions, I got an approval.
you got a waiver
waiver
of site
You're
plan
gonna-
review.
You're gonna have to,
So I got a waiver of site plan.
Yeah.
Right.
It sounds stupid, but it's a very specific action by the planning board. Okay, the planning board does site plan reviews or waives them. We have the special permit granting authority, but we don't want to go special permit on all of these, believe me. That would be ridiculous.
And we're not advocating that.
Right. And
So we can change approval to waiver of site plan.
yeah, that would be appropriate.
So let's do
And
that.
anyone conducting business in East Long Meadow needs a business certificate.
most banks,
Not
Or is
anyone,
it
it's
not?
corporations that are
That's
operated under their own
questionable.
name.
Jim Donahue has been
Yeah.
Any
questioning.
almost
business that
positive.
requires a bank account needs to get.
And
Get a-
right, a bank
exactly.
account, but there are a lot of businesses that don't need a bank account. We've had a lot
then
of,
that's not a business.
yeah,
Right.
well, we've
Yeah,
had,
and that's
Actually, I
why,
mean-
What do you do with the money?
This
It's all
is, this
cash?
is where it gets into a muddy area, so
would-
yeah.
that's why we ended up where we
Yeah, we're
ended
not
up.
lawyers.
Saying
I would
that if you
ask
have
that-
to
Go
get a
ahead, Ralph.
certificate,
The
then
board-
that would
You
be
need a
the measure.
business
Yeah.
there.
I would
Sure
ask that
do.
the board
Yeah.
talk
We-
to Jim Donahue,
yeah,
because it was my understanding that a corporation does not need a business certificate even to open up an account at a bank,
Right.
because articles of incorporation are good enough to do that.
as long as they're operating under the name of the corporation.
Except the banks are requiring.
The banks
But the-
require it.
But the
Business.
corporation has to have an address.
Right.
Yeah.
But
The
the-
banks
the-
are requiring it
the
regardless
bank-
of whether they are or not.
I
Yeah.
disagree, because I just opened up one with just articles of incorporation right here in town at a local bank. And
You opened
they,
what?
a business checking account, and they did not require a business certificate. And like I
That's
said, I
not-
just wanna make sure that, that if we're allowing a home office and a business certificate, that it's not unduly jeopardizing a DBA, which says, okay, I need a business certificate, but the LLC, which doesn't need one, says, okay, I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about this.
And there,
I just wanna make
Yeah.
sure, that's all, and that's why I would ask.
and there are individuals who conduct for private businesses under their own name, okay?
And you don't need a
who
business certificate for that.
put it into their personal banking account and file with the IRS with that income as being from, I forget what schedule it is, but there's a
Schedule C.
C, yeah. You don't need to have a bank account for that.
Right, so why should the waiver of site plan be tied to the business certificate?
Right, I think they're totally different things.
Well, that was the sticking point with
yeah.
our committee.
Yeah,
Because that was as if I can speak for the committee,
Sure.
there was discussion over whether that piece belongs in the bylaw at all.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so if,
Actually, the business certificate falls under the general bylaws,
yeah, it does, so,
because that's the clerk's responsibility, so I think that last sentence should be crossed off. It's just prior to any business being conducted at a
it's the
residence.
residence, and I think that covers it, okay? I mean, I understand your concerns there, but I also know from the people that have come before us within the last 5 years for waivers, that a number of them are doing this as individuals,
Sole proprietors.
sole proprietors, basically, with no business certificate. Now, whether or not that it's required under Mass General Law or under the town bylaw is not the purview of the planning board, that's town clerk's issue, okay? And I'm not gonna pretend to understand Mass General Law and business, because
I just don't think we should combine the general laws and the zoning bylaws.
I agree. But, I think overall, the thrust is great. And again, we'll have to hold a hearing on it and see what people think of it. But I think we should go forward with it. How does the board feel? Does this make sense?
It does make sense. That should definitely be stricken off.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
the only concern I have going forwards with this, at this specific time,
Mhm.
is there's just something extremely similar was just shot down incredibly at last town meeting. I'm not sure bringing it back with 7 or 8 other articles that we already have is a good thought. Again, I would refer to the board on their thought.
I think part of the last time was-
annual town meeting was pretty tough on us.
But I think it was presentation, and I think it was, on our part, we thought everybody was gonna understand it very easily, and unfortunately, I don't think we presented it in the right light, and it became adversarial. We didn't have the question, or the answers to the questions that we should have had.
And I know a large part had to do with not allowing any clients or customers coming to the house, even incidental ones.
that's why we wrote what we did.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I understand that. I'm just not sure if changing that little bit is enough.
And this may go back to where we started tonight, with your group representing, some of these bylaws, why the language was written, how it was, how it came to be, and I think that would help, rather than the planning board standing alone saying, this is what we think, but if we have a secondary board that says, this is, why we're presenting this tonight.
Why we raised it in our
Yeah.
notes tonight.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a problem, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to resolve, and this is what we're bringing before you, before town meeting.
But
I think that would help.
I would like to go forward with it and at least hold the hearing on it and see what input we get, if any.
Okay.
And the last one, real quickly, because we do have a hearing coming up, is limitation on size of buildings. What were the changes there, if any?
Nothing.
It's just really clarification, because it's
The wording was very complex.
Okay.
really hard to follow.
And we sat there scratching our heads and.
Well, it did come out of the Board of Selectmen, so,
We figured it must have.
yeah.
We didn't really change the intent at all, we really just tried to simplify the language so that the intent was that nothing larger than 65,000
Yeah.
or 1,500 feet. And there's no way to work around that. And try to simplify the language so that it was clear, it was referenced directly. And I don't think we changed any of the intent at all.
You just reworded it and shuffled it around a little
Yeah,
bit.
We were
just
having trouble
clarified.
reading it, we would start reading it. and
Put the
we-
new one and the old one side by side.
I'm looking at them
You have a
right
very
now,
And I
yeah.
think you'll
difficult time.
see that there, hopefully, you'll
Those
agree.
ones
that
give you a
There's-
headache.
What was the one we were talking about?
This was also, I'm sorry, Robin.
3.333.
No, there was something that Ralph had brought up. It didn't say
in-
parcel though, does it?
In the actual zoning book, it refers to parcels for all buildings for retail sales purpose within a business district, the floor area, whether located in a single building or in 2 or more buildings on a single parcel, if 1B below applies, or multiple parcels. And you've switched it to all floor areas within 1,500 feet of one another. I think there's a difference between parcels within 1,500 feet of each other and buildings within
There is a
1,500
difference.
feet.
There is a difference.
Huge
There is a
difference.
difference, because you can have a parcel with no building on it. The whole idea of the bylaw was to limit 65,000 square feet to a, for lack of a better word, big box use. That was what the town was determining that they were gonna do with this particular bylaw. And in trying to protect the town and a creative real estate developer who, sorry, Ty, who tried to figure out how to get by the 65,000 square feet would be to break up that use that would normally be under one roof on one building and put it into separate buildings, put your garden center here, maybe your lumber or whatever someplace else. And so the concern was to limit either one building at 65,000 square feet or multiple buildings if they were closer than 1,400 feet of one another. You would aggregate the square footage of those buildings if certain things applied. If the use was retail, if the floor areas, if normally combined, would construe one use, one big box use, and if they were all owned by the same entity.
Right. My thought was, it says the gross area of buildings on a single parcel of land or two or more parcels of land within 1,500 feet. So
But does what we did change that?
I think it does.
How does it change?
Has to change
I'm not
lot
sure
line.
because the original one is ambiguous, okay? Because it could be interpreted as buildings within 1,500 square feet or parcels within 100,000. It's ambiguous the way the sentence is written.
Yeah, I don't think the parcels really matters. It's what we're concerned about is the
Was the
buildings.
use-
Right,
of the
but
parcel.
the way B was written originally, it's ambiguous.
Right, we
It
agree.
does
Well, that's- okay.
not say what the 1,500 refers to. It could refer to either the parcels or the buildings, Okay. which is a badly written sentence.
It's
Yeah.
a
And
real
I-
bad
it's
written
very
sentence.
And I
that's
think
there.
you've clarified it by making it specific to the buildings.
Ralph was
I-
thinking that it meant from parcel
To
Right.
to
parcel.
parcel, so 1,500 feet of parcel lines.
Yeah,
And I think that's where it was ambiguous.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think they meant the buildings, but,
So-
Yeah,
we
they-
okay?
they clearly meant the
I-
buildings.
Right.
I happen to like the changes because, I mean, I personally think 1,500 feet in between buildings is a long ways. And I don't think you would ever
Quarter of a mile.
have one retail establishment with two buildings 2,000 feet apart. So, I mean, I like the way you rewrote it, but I was concerned that with parcels, it may have even put farther distance in
Yeah.
between them.
So
And
you're
we were
looking to,
concerned too with the way the criteria marched out, the aggregation of the buildings that, within 1,500 feet, was only important in this situation if those three criteria were met.
yeah.
right.
Because we discussed planned business development, we discussed some, future use of a large parcel, which would definitely include potentially more than 65,000 square feet of retail space. And how would that factor into this particular restriction?
It shouldn't though, right? Under,
No, not under planned business
No,
development.
no.
Yeah.
But even if a retailer wanted to develop a parcel with mixed uses on that parcel and not come under planned business development, as long as it wasn't all owned by the same entity, that it could conceivably
Well,
happen.
I guess what I'm thinking here, the way it's written is the same way as it's written here. We're not changing this.
Okay.
But something like the Stop and Shop Plaza,
Correct.
okay, which is all owned by one entity,
Right.
correct.
okay, and leased to individuals, or even Rockies, which is all owned by one entity, but it has numerous small stores in it.
That's planned business development.
That's planned business, well, Rockies is,
We'll
but,
go back to Stop and Shop.
Stop and Shop.
It's over 65,000 feet, it's owned by one entity,
Yeah.
but it's divided up in multiple businesses.
but that's not
also
the,
pre-bylaw.
that's pre-bylaw, but that's not the
Right,
way
right.
this was written. We don't have a whole lot of parcels available right now. They're gonna,
Basically that one.
that,
this was written
that one
for.
and big one, well, that one.
And even that one doesn't even really work.
Yeah.
It's wet and everything else, so.
It's got huge issues,
Got
we know that.
Major issues.
But.
So George, are you looking for the article to delete this entire section and replace with this?
I think that's what we're proposing.
Okay.
Okay. And again, I think we ought to hear it, we ought to submit it, hear it, and then decide whether to go forward with it or whether to modify it slightly.
We agree.
But
Okay.
submit it to the selectmen.
Submit it, okay? And if after a hearing, we decide that the change is not right, we can always not go forward with it. But at least we have the chance to have it on the warrant. And,
We agree.
you know, I've got no objection to admitting I made a mistake and saying, gee, we put this forward and it's really not right after hearing what people had to say about it, and we're going to not therefore push it at this town meeting. We've done that many times. And- But I appreciate your hard work on this.
What,
and,
the
yeah,
the only other is that we didn't complete
It's the FEMA,
is the total definition.
the total definition, yeah.
Because we've added the,
Yeah, I have a problem with the definitions. Did the setback definition come from you folks or from?
Yes, setback definition
Yeah.
came from us, yes.
Why did you use the term street line? Minimum required setback.
Okay, when you're putting a building, like a building footprint, the minimum required setback would be in 50 feet for a double A zone, for
Right.
example. However, and so when you're referring to the minimum required setback, that is what we're talking about, but there are other sections of the bylaw that talk about the setback of the primary building.
Right.
The building setback is a different definition than the actual footprint
Right.
definition.
My question is,
I'm looking at Michael, do you agree, Michael?
I'm following
my,
along.
my question is, why do you use the word street rather than property line? Because streets normally are not at the property line.
Yeah,
We've had
property
that
line should
problem.
be used, because
Our
the
mistake.
street, the street line
Yeah.
is the center point of the street, and that's,
Yeah.
could be 15, 20 feet greater than.
okay, between the property.
Or
Right,
even the
right,
curb
right.
could be, is easily
It
5
should
to
be the
10
property
feet.
line.
Okay. Just
All right.
one of those things that
Clarification.
people will come in and,
Well, you know, we meet 2 hours
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
time
no,
we
yeah.
meet, and at the end of the night, we're like,
Yeah.
I think we got it all down.
yeah. And that also protects the town because streets can be widened.
Sure.
Up to the right of way. Okay, like Elm Street, for instance, which needs to be widened. And if you have street line, then suddenly the street gets wider, it doesn't, yeah.
If property line,
Property
yeah.
line.
Property
so
line,
s-
definitely.
If that's done, then we also need to change the fencing, because it's listed here. No fence more than 1/4 solid or greater than 4 feet in height, except retaining walls shall be erected
That should be
closer to the
property.
street
It should
line.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be
than the
property
setback
line.
of the
Property line
primary
also.
Yeah.
building.
Property line.
Yeah. And anywhere it says street line, it should be property line.
And we've always been discussing it in our group as property line.
Yeah, okay. And D says a lot line, so, yeah. It's,
Yeah.
I know that was what you meant.
would that
Let's,
be-
let's use the same term
3.30
throughout, so if we're gonna use
also.
property line against it,
Okay.
or lot line.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, with
Please.
that being said, under the existing bylaw, it says no fence more than 1/4 solid shall be erected closer to the street than the setback of the primary building. That's where the street line came
Okay,
in.
but
It's
I,
just from the street, not the street line, though.
yeah, I think
Well-
the
That
intent
is
was
incorrect.
the property line.
Yeah, it's meant the property
It
line
has to be.
that,
You
that
can't
near the
measure
street.
from the street.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so.
But you're
the setback-
clarifying that's important.
All right, so the
It is.
setback is good, the wall is good for the definitions.
No, the wall, yeah, the
Yes,
definitions are
yes.
good, yeah, yeah.
And what about the area or facility for sporting facility? Did you want to leave that or talk about it or?
Historically, that has always created issues
Mhm.
when an applicant comes before the town and wants to put in a sporting facility. And it was, you know, we all knew what it was, we just didn't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And so this was a stab at being a little bit more clear with some examples.
Mhm.
It doesn't change the intent of the current bylaw, but it talks about, I mean, the basic rationale is the town cannot handle from an infrastructure basis, a civic center, for example. And so, or some sort of large entertainment area. But we were concerned in doing this definition that we would somehow create some issues with school programs, and so we appropriately exempted them from this because that would be under a different umbrella as to what kind of programs they would be having at the, in the new sports field with the lights and whatnot.
I guess this is a good beginning point. I'm still concerned a little bit that, for instance, Pioneer Gymnastics, okay, it's primarily a gymnastics school. They hold events there, okay, gymnastic events, at which spectators attend.
Okay, so do the recreation, so do the tennis clubs or the racquetball, sometimes they have.
Yeah. So, you got the word significant number of spectators.
Exactly.
I think that's the thing.
We knew we couldn't define significant, but I mean, I knew that was
Yeah.
going to be a sticking point. Ralph will tell you we struggled with that.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's a really tough definition, because I think Pioneer was doing a great job, and I think that, we struggled for a long time with the proposed roller arena and roller hockey facility, if you will, and eventually came to what we thought was a reasonable conclusion on that would allow them to operate without being.
That was an existing structure.
No, this is
No?
new.
Where are they located?
No, no.
Home lumber.
Yeah, the structure was existing.
Structure is existing, but the use is completely
All
new.
right, no, but the structure is, so the structure is somehow defined the scope of the use. You couldn't go beyond.
You couldn't go any bigger, but the
Right.
issue was parking, okay, for how many participants and spectators.
Of which you can't drop it off.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that's even qualifies for what this
I,
area.
it depends on how you interpret it, okay?
Because the bylaw currently prohibits it. All across the board, the bylaw currently prohibits area and facility for sporting activity is not allowed all the way across the board.
Right, but it all does allow. let's see.
True, but I mean, but what is it that we don't allow? That's what has always been an issue.
But recreational facility, commercial and private,
That's
okay,
different.
is allowed by special permit.
Correct. That's not what we're talking about.
Well, question was, what's the difference between recreation and sporting? I guess.
It's the scope of the sport, it's the
Right.
scope of the recreation, it's the scope of the area. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole issue.
Exactly. And I think this is a great
Stop
way to do it.
first.
I need to think about it for a
Okay.
bit, okay? I'm not gonna give an opinion tonight, I need to think about this one, because I'm also thinking like, if somebody wants to come in and do something and is going to try to bend this around.
But currently, it's not allowed. I
Yeah,
mean,
well-
And the desire is not to change it.
Yeah.
The desire is to make it more clear what's not allowed.
Right. What we've seen in the past is people trying to define sporting facilities as recreational facilities, and not having a clear distinction between the two. Okay?
I think that might come up with, not to be argumentative,
Yeah,
just
sure.
it might come up with the scope of what they're proposing and what they need for parking or what they need for area to accomplish their goal.
Right.
I mean, that would then sort of define, are we dealing with a recreational use or are we dealing with something else?
Yeah, exactly. And, we dealt with this also with the high school fields, regard to their being leased out to a outside group, as to whether that group was professional or not. And we're assured by the school department that they are not professional, and therefore it was allowed under this, under the existing bylaw that was recreational and not professional.
Right. Because we
Okay.
talked about that too.
Yeah. So, okay, but
Okay.
I think it's good. I think we need to think about it, and we'll need to hear it again, and
So-
hold the hearing, yeah.
So that's not going to go into the warrant.
I think it should go into the warrant, and we should hold a hearing on it, and.
But how do you want to word the warrant then?
Like this,
All right, the way it's written?
yeah. And
amended,
if, again, if we need to modify that, we
We can
need to
modify it,
modify it. At some
amend
point. Amend it, we can amend it,
On
yeah,
the floor.
yeah.
but at least we're moving forward with something.
No, I misunderstood
Yeah.
what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I think we're real close on it. I think we need to think about it some and get some other input, okay? If there is any other input.
But meanwhile, submit it as it is.
Yeah. And I think the FEMA one, you've all seen this, it's basically referring to the new maps.
Yep.
It's the same thing we had, but it refers to the new dates and maps, so that we're referring to the
For the
proper.
floodplain.
Floodplain, yeah, the proper documentation. Okay,
There was
anything else?
Change, did those get
I
made?
really appreciate your time.
Well, we really appreciate your time, we appreciate all your hard work, and, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious on your FEMA one, did these sections on the bottom, I saw that there was, by removing in their entirety sections, it should read A through E and replacing with the following.
Okay,
Yeah,
it should be A.
this just isn't the right copy, yeah.
A through E, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's, again, this is,
That's okay.
if we've got
You have
typos
to
in it,
help.
we can correct those on the floor, but we need to,
No, that is, because it
Yep.
was just a typographical.
yeah, okay.
And I know we have more business coming up, but I would like to go back afterwards to the fences. I just have a little more discussion before we
Okay.
go forwards with that.
We can do that.
Thank you.
But
We're not
we're all
gonna
agreed
finish
that
that
the articles themselves should go forward, they may need a little tweaking, but we've got time to do that. What's the deadline for our articles, Robin?
March 15th.
March 15th. So this will be our last meeting before then, but Robin has got time to catch up on typos and stuff, and then we'll hold a hearing, and based on the hearing, we can either proceed or not, or amend on the floor. Right, it's not a
We would have to amend on the floor by then.
significant, right, it's not a significant amendment, okay.
One of those hearings held,
They'll be
know yet.
scheduled between now and town meeting.
statutory timeframe before the town meeting, or,
It's within 6 months of town meeting.
well, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah,
We qualify.
yeah, yeah. But as to exactly when, it depends on what our other schedule
We're
looks
probably
like.
looking
and-
April.
Because we've got the advertising deadlines before that, to
Right.
and all that sort of thing. So it'll be in April.
Maybe April 9th or the 23rd.
Is the 9th possibly election night?
Is it the 9th?
The 9th
Yes.
or the
Is it
30th,
possible?
depending on.
Then it's,
what
no,
Board
it's
of
the
Select-
30th, I thought.
Well, did they make a decision?
The state makes that decision.
I thought that the local,
The board, I thought, they're meeting
That's
tonight,
the option.
right.
but
the option.
I was
Oh, to
hearing
combine it,
that they
yeah.
were, what I heard is that they're probably going to keep them separate.
Yeah, Tom
Keep it
Florence
separate.
is not,
Because
for it.
they don't feel the town is capable
Right.
of holding two separate elections on the same day.
right.
Because being state and local, they would have to have two sets of
ballots.
voting machines and ballots and everything else, and it just gets,
So we're probably looking at the 23rd of April.
okay,
All right,
Okay?
okay, so.
Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks a lot, I appreciate all your hard work, and let us know when you're meeting, and we'll get somebody there, okay?
Initiate that.
Please do,
Hey, thanks a lot.
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, we're past 7:15, so we can open up our public hearing on a special permit for Elizabeth Carpels on a large family daycare at 31 Wilder Lane. I ask the clerk to read the legal notice.
East Long Meadow Planning Board public hearing. The Planning Board of the Town of East Long Meadow will hold a public hearing on February 26th, 2013 at 7:15 PM in the hearing room of the Town Hall, 60 Center Square, on application for special permit of Elizabeth Carpels to operate a large family home daycare to include up to 10 children on the property located at 31 Wilder Lane. Information regarding this application is on file with the Planning Board and available to the public.
Okay. Do we have any correspondence relating to this?
No.
No. And you're Ms. Carpels? Okay. If you could identify yourself for the tape, just,
Elizabeth Carpels, 31 Wilder Lane, East Long Meadow.
okay. And you already have a facility there?
I do.
And you've got 6 now, and you want to go up to 10?
No, it's just, I have 6+.
Okay.
And that's how I'm keeping it, so I'm not going up to 10.
So what does 6+ mean?
6 plus 2 school age
Okay.
children,
So you're gonna be at 8?
right, which is
Okay.
what my license is for
Okay.
already.
So you've got the license, and this is for the special permit to allow that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions from the board on this?
Not at this time.
Even having 8 children, do you need an assistant but not certified? I know we've been through.
No.
Those are her kids, so she's.
Yeah, 2 are hers, I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so the school age kids, as long as you don't have 8 at, the same time, and it's 3, depending on the ratio, whether you have, how many children, infants, whatever, but I have 2 school age, which makes it 8, but they're never there at
Okay.
the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay. Being a public hearing, we'll open up to the floor. Does anyone have any questions or comments? And identify yourself, please.
I'm Laurel Corvell. I'm sorry, I've lost my voice.
You're welcome to come forward, so we can hear you. You don't have to shout.
I'm not shouting, I just lost it. I am in the neighborhood, I don't know where you want me, but I'm concerned because it is a neighborhood and, we are a sleepy neighborhood where I don't want too much noise to be going on and things. And we were not aware that another daycare has also expanded their numbers. We didn't get it until the same time that we got Beth's paper in the thing, so I missed the last hearing on the other one that has just happened in the neighborhood. So we're just concerned that technically those numbers can double to 20 kids now because there's another daycare right across the street from her. And that's all, that is my concern, is that right now they are they were small daycares until the other one went through, and now this one could also, complete the numbers, double what was in the neighborhood just a few weeks ago. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
It's not gonna double. At most, it's gonna go from 12, theoretically, prior to this, to, in this case,
Maximum of 20.
maximum of 20,
Right.
But it would be 18.
based on her license, 18. So it's not doubling, but it is
No, but
an increase.
until I walked in here, I didn't realize that. I just knew the numbers were
Sure.
going up to 10.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
before we go, could we have your address, please?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I am sorry. I'm 25 Spring Valley Road.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And can you remind me where Wilder and Spring Valley are in town? Because I'm not always, if you could,
It's off of Indian Spring
okay,
Road, which
so
is
it's
off
back
of
in that
Pleasant.
area, yeah,
Yes.
okay, got it. That's that little group of streets that's kind of a big cul-de-sac, if you
Right.
will.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments from the floor? No, hearing none. Okay, I appreciate your comments there. Do you have anything you'd like to say regards to the amount of traffic that this would change or anything?
Well, I had my license for almost 10 years,
Mhm.
and the traffic, it's pretty much been at the same number, other than the school age kids,
Mhm.
which is just 2. They're in and they're. It's just an additional 2 cars or 2 families. I don't have any intention of going up to 10.
Yeah.
I'm very.
Well, your license
comfortable
doesn't
where
allow you to go to 10, right? Yeah, at the moment?
No, it doesn't
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just where I've been for, almost 10
So,
years.
so this doesn't actually constitute a change for you?
No.
We're just bringing you
No.
into special permit
Right.
at this point?
Right.
And when this was originally approved, it was
For 6.
6.
for 6. It was looked at by the police department at that point, and the traffic impact was not considered to be,
Right, I don't think, Ms. Corbell, is that your name?
Yes,
I'm
it
sorry, I
is
don't think
Ms.
she's
Corbell.
talking traffic.
No, what I'm concerned about is the fact that both of the daycares, they've been there for a while, just as
Yeah.
Beth has said, and there's been no problems up to this point. What I'm saying is the fact that the other daycare just also enlarged
Increased, yeah.
also, increased also. And I'm not trying to pick on Beth at all.
Sure.
I mean, I'm friends with her, very friendly with her. My problem is I'm concerned about the numbers being both of those daycares in that one tight spot.
Yeah.
They're literally across the street from each other. They're not even 50 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
And that's what's concerning to my husband and I.
Sure, I appreciate that. And, you know, again, I think the traffic patterns back there are pretty good. It's not a cul-de-sac per se. It's, you get flow through the whole area. And if it's an issue of the children being noisy outside, I'm not sure, you know, I mean, you've been operating this for a long time. You're aware of neighbor issues, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We take that into consideration. You know, per our license, we're to stay in our yard, and the other daycare needs to stay in their yard. We can't interact.
Sure.
For that matter, so it wouldn't be like 20 if it was ever to go up to that on one property.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're pretty respectful to our neighbors, and we take that into consideration.
Okay.
That being said, kids will be kids, and they do, you know, tend to
Yes.
yell and scream, but, you know, for the most part, I haven't had any issues with it yet. I can only speak for myself, but I.
Sure. Okay, with that, I'll take it back to the board.
We have someone else in the audience.
Marilyn Richards,
Yeah.
342 Pinehurst. I used to live in this neighborhood, so these are my neighbors. I'm not speaking against what's going on in terms of either location, but being a grandmother who babysit, that's a term, who does childcare before school, waiting for the school bus. I will tell you that there are some of your mothers who are late in arriving to get the kids out of their cars in line for the school buses. I can hear their cars coming down Heatherstone before I even see them because they're moving that fast. You know, I have done nothing about it because I've just started to notice this, and I thought maybe a word to the wise might be sufficient.
Yeah.
It's not safe to have kids waiting at the end of the driveway for the bus and have these cars moving in excess of the speed limit.
Well, and again, that's an issue
I know
that
it.
needs to be highlighted with our local police department.
I realize that.
If there's a safety issue due to people not following the traffic laws, then I know that they will be happy to come out and sit there for a morning or two and correct the situation, at least temporarily. I'm not sure I understand how that relates to the daycare, though.
It's dropping the kids off at the daycare.
Dropping the kids.
But
Traffic.
she said the school buses.
Well, that's where they are at the daycare.
Yes.
It's us.
That's what the school age.
Oh, okay, so you got two
pertains to.
school-age kids? Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
And one of the school age kids lives in the neighborhood, so her dad is actually, you know, they're waiting with her.
Yeah,
in the
see, he's
morning.
not driving down Heatherstone at
No,
90
he's
miles an
already in
hour.
the neighborhood, so.
Yeah. I mean, if people are gonna behave irresponsibly outside of your control, there's nothing you can do about that. And if it's a safety issue, obviously, best thing to do is to try to work with the parents so that you don't have to get a patrol car out there with a radar. But if it's that bad, then that's always an option, okay? It's
Absolutely.
one or two tickets and the word will get out. But in any case, I'll take it back to the board at this point. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I would just comment, actually, I'd just like to follow up that one of the school-age children already lives in the neighborhood. And my thought, that's not bringing another vehicle in, so
Yeah.
what we're looking at doing basically is increasing from, per se, 6 to 7 then. Instead of having another vehicle coming in from another location.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, we're not changing it dramatically by any means.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
so,
Second.
Moved by Ralph,
So
seconded
moved.
by Mike. Take it back to the board. Any questions? It sounds like this is an operation that's been there that wants to bring itself into, it's gonna be doing the same thing she's been doing. She wants to bring herself into doing it legally under the zoning law by getting a special permit. It's not gonna be more detrimental to the neighborhood than it already is, if it is at all right now. And that's where I sit. Anyone have any other comments?
I agree with you, George.
Do I have a motion to approve the special permit?
Let's close the public hearing first.
We did.
Just
We
did.
gotta vote on it.
Oh, look, I thought we voted on it. No?
No.
We didn't vote on it.
Okay, let's vote on it.
Okay,
All in favor?
Aye.
It's closing the public hearing.
okay. Now we
Okay.
can move forward.
Do I have a motion to approve the special permit?
So moved.
Second.
And second it. Do I have any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so your special permit's approved,
Thank you very much.
and stay in contact with your neighbors.
Thank
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments, thank you for coming.
Sorry about that.
No, it's
No,
fine,
that's-
it's easy to lose track.
I know
You'll
it is. I
You'll
know it
learn
is.
next year, you'll learn
I'm-
starting in May.
I was learning in a couple of months.
It's easy to lose track. Okay. We have two,
Ralph
what?
needs to talk about the fence.
Oh,
He's
fence.
I
going-
just-
Let's
He's
get the
going
fence.
to
Let's
have a
get
heart
that out of
attack
the
if
way.
we don't.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'd just like to bring it back, as far as, the definition of building setback.
Where are you in?
And the fence bylaw, we have to distinguish somehow that the building setback is from, the front
Property line.
the front property line or the street. You can't build a fence on town property.
Right.
What if
So
it's-
whether your property line is, 3 feet back from the street or not, I don't think it makes a difference because you can't build on town property.
It does though.
But by saying street, what you're simply saying is the front yard. You're not saying, if you just use property line, then you could construe that, the setback would be from the building to the side property line.
Okay, well-
back.
That's a side yard
In that-
setback.
in
That's
that
a different
case-
differentiation,
You could write property line
front property line.
Or front property line.
parallel to the street.
The whole purpose, if I may.
Yeah.
Is to keep property owners from only building anything
On
in
their property.
their property,
Square.
not
Right.
town property.
Right.
Right, so I think just from the property line, you
I
can
see.
say front property line.
Front property line would be great. Make it front
Yeah.
property line.
I would say property line. That would
Yeah, because on a
encompass
corner lot,
everything.
you've got two
Right,
fronts.
What if you got a
every
corner
single
lot?
property
Right,
line,
and
yeah.
you got two
Yeah.
fronts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Property
It
line.
has to be the
Period.
property.
It has to be the
Property.
property line,
No question.
because otherwise it's ambiguous and, street lines can move. They can get narrower and wider.
And they do.
Because what we're looking at with the fence bylaw
Yeah.
is so that you're not building a 6-foot-high fence across the front of your property.
Right,
You can build it, down the side of the
Outside.
property.
So front.
Right.
You can build it across the back of the property.
right.
Unless it's a corner.
Unless it's a corner lot.
Right.
Yeah,
But that's,
Or if you got two roads.
yeah.
and that's where the street line came in.
Yeah.
Because if it's a corner lot, now you have 2 streets.
But it's
So
got-
you're,
it's still
you're
have to be
setting
a
back
property.
from,
Still has to be property
Yeah,
line.
you could say a property line adjacent to the street, however you wanna do it, but it's gotta say
Or-
property line.
Property
Be-
line adjacent
because-
to right away.
Adjacent to the right.
I tell you,
adjacent to a street,
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Something like
But
that.
I think it's gotta refer to street at some point.
I
Okay.
think Michael's right, it should be right of way because we have paper streets too that are
adjacent to
streets.
the right of way,
To a right of way.
to a right of way. Okay,
We're gonna get torn up.
That's fine.
that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Do you know that, did you look at the definition of corner lot?
No,
Again?
It says, a lot bounded on 2 or more sides by streets. In any corner lot, the street line setback must be maintained from all street lines forming boundaries of a lot.
well
Right,
then,
which is,
Should be property line.
it should be property line.
it's incorrect.
I mean, in essence,
Well,
street line and property line is one and the
have a
same.
we actually have a definition for street line. The dividing line between a street and a lot, and in the case of a public way, the street line established by a public authority laying out said way upon which like lot abuts.
Right.
But that,
Abut.
even that is,
Zoning.
But a street line in essence and a property line are one and the same. Where the asphalt
Yeah.
meets
Not
the
keeping it
grass
away.
it's not the
is,
street line.
is a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, I understand. But particularly with the fence bylaw, I think we need to be really explicit about
I
it.
agree.
Because people are gonna read this. they can go, there's the street,
Right.
okay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been walking along,
Well,
On-
even if they do, even if they read it that way, you can't build a fence any closer to than the setback
let's-
of the primary building.
Let's read it,
But-
let's write
but
it the way it needs to be.
I can tell you,
interpreted.
I've been walking along streets that don't have sidewalks on the grass, and had people tell me to get off their property.
And it's not their
When I know it's,
Right.
it's,
Right.
you know, people think their property goes all the way up to the
street,
curb,
yeah.
Guaranteed.
okay? And
Try.
for clarity, for the
Yeah, you can't say
purposes of the
nothing else.
person who
I know.
wants to build a fence, I think the word property line is important, so that they don't have to go looking through places of the bylaw to find it, okay? It's,
Let's do something simple.
I know it sounds simplistic, but,
This is simple.
okay, we got what, an A and R?
Two
Two A
A&Rs.
and Rs. Okay, that's the first one, yeah.
Who was the,
This is
Oh, okay.
Winterberry LLC, this is Porter Road,
Oh, we splitting
the
that?
house that, yes, abuts the subdivision in the back.
yeah, I gotta recuse myself from this one.
Okay, so we're,
Brilliant.
Huh?
Oops.
Don't drop the flag.
You don't have to leave to do
You don't
that.
have to leave.
no, not for an A and R.
You gotta take this.
So they're proposing to split that front lot
Split
into two.
this lot.
So they get another building lot out of it. The frontage is legal,
Yes,
okay? That's just all we really need to care about
on an accessible way.
on an accessible way, definitely. And are they establishing a back, no, that back line is already established, right?
Correct.
Okay. So,
Is this A? Residence
A, A and
Yes.
B are being split.
The 25 foot's okay for the setback of the house?
That,
Yes, it's 20 feet.
Okay.
but all we look at is the front,
All you have to look at is the
frontage on an A
frontage.
and R.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to endorse the A and R for, what is this? 439 Porter Road?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Do we need 3 signatures on this?
No, just one.
Just one?
I'll let you date it.
Okay.
There you go, George.
Okay. Then you sign all of them?
There's two there, oh yeah.
Yeah, one more.
There's
Okay.
two Mylars, two.
I got the two.
Oh, you did, all right.
Okay. Oh, this one. We don't know why this one is being done, but it's
Have no clue.
legal. That's all it counts.
We don't need to know. Yep, I already looked at this one. This is right
Hang
here.
on, George,
What's
let me
happening?
get this.
Oh, that corner there?
Yeah, they're straightening.
Yep, directly behind the existing house, you can see a dotted line coming across.
Yeah, they're making it straight.
Oh, data deck.
No,
No, no, they're bringing it this way.
because it still
They're
isn't
transferring
conforming.
this sliver to this
Oh my
piece
God,
of
I can't
property.
get this out.
Okay,
I have no idea why, but
Because
need
it's
to
still
know.
non-conforming.
it's still non-conforming.
right.
But all we're looking at is frontage
Right,
for an A
it's got-
and R. And
And there's plenty
there's
of
no
frontage.
change in the frontage.
So this house is getting that piece and that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
For argument's sake. The piece on the right does not have enough frontage, but it's irrelevant.
Actually, it does.
Yeah, it does.
109 and 65.
Oh, my
It has
mistake.
165.
Yeah. Saw the wrong one.
174,
Glad
5.
to hand that.
Yeah. Okay, do you have a motion to endorse the A and R?
Need
Do
your glasses.
So moved.
I have a second?
Second, it's right.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
George needs to sign it.
Okay.
Stick it under here. Get them all done.
Where's it going? Is it going this way?
Yeah, so that way, yeah. It's up to them. It could be just, it could be septic system, because there's no septic. Nothing's there, too.
This one only has one Mylar,
The deck?
Robin?
Mine.
Or he's gonna build
I think
something.
there's two there, isn't there? They're better.
That's what-
Right under here.
Oh, it's underneath,
Yes.
it's underneath, okay,
No,
got
no,
it.
sort.
Did he lose it?
I don't know.
Did he lose that?
Like gain.
Did you read the minutes
No,
of
you're right, you lost it.
January
I'm sorry.
15th?
Okay, sorry. I'm thinking backwards.
He built something.
I have the 15th, the 29th now.
15?
Yes, 29th now.
You signed it too?
15th, yep. Good to go.
I think you missed a date on that.
No, but I'll let Marvin Damon, I got the Mylars dated, so.
That's,
Okay.
Okay.
Michael and Sandra read the minutes and approved them.
Okay. So a motion to, for which date?
15th.
Just the 15th.
We have a motion to approve the minutes for January 15th?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have a waiver?
Yes, hold on just a second.
There you go.
Believe that?
No, I don't.
we have a request for waiver of site plan, property owner, Michael Tammy and April Knight, owner's address 26 Orange Street, name of proposed business Butterfly Ballroom, owner of business April Knight, business owner's address 26 Orange Street, property address 26 Orange Street, proposed hours of operation Monday through Friday, 9 to 9 p.m. I'm assuming 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Number of employees, including owner 1. Summary of business. Home-based office for independent ballroom instruction and performance. No clients come to the property and no commercial vehicles exist. Instruction primarily in Enfield, Connecticut, with performances and competitions in the area.
Okay, so it sounds like a typical home business where they have an office but not much else.
Right.
Okay, any question, do I have a motion to approve the waiver of site plan review?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we have a motion on the table, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there any other business before the board?
I just need to go back to the A&Rs. Michael, you recused yourself from which one?
The one on Porter Road,
Porter Road.
I think it's Winterberry.
That's what I thought, okay. There is one thing, you all received my emails with regard to the ethics training. Do you want to go to the class, or do you want to do it by yourself? You can also come into my office and do it if you want.
I would prefer to do it on, myself, I prefer to do it online.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll all be online.
Yeah, I can do it
But I
from
do
home.
need, okay, I do need the printed certificate.
Right.
And I also need your acknowledgement that you received the information about it,
Okay.
that signature page. If you want to come into my office, I can set you up on my computer and you can go through it. Really takes, it says an hour and a half, but it's really not an hour and a half. It's like 30 minutes. You can do it really quick.
An hour and 15 it took me, because I kept going over it.
That's
You
just
kept going backwards.
because you're so ethical.
So,
Is this the same as real estate ethics? Because if I already passed that, so.
No, this
has
is
nothing to
different.
do with real estate.
Figured I'd try.
This is
This
to
is
do with,
oxymoron.
but
Yeah,
it's just
actually.
and it's just videos and it just explains everything and then it gives questions.
Yeah.
But if you get it wrong, it says, you're wrong,
Hmm.
and then you choose another answer.
Just like
So
that
it
also.
just helps you
Multiple
with,
guess.
you know, little things like
Kinda like
gifts
doing homework
and
with my kids at night.
stuff like that, yeah.
Okay.
So, but April 12th is the deadline. and it's mandatory, so,
Okay.
Okay.
like I said, if you want, come into my office, I'll hook you up and you'll be all set.
Why is she looking at us?
Tuesday, I'll be there Tuesday.
One other thing I want to point out
Tuesday.
is that Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has 2 draft plans that they have just put out for comment. One is on green infrastructure, and the other is on clean energy. They are both available at the PVPC website, or I can email you copies of the plan if you'd like to read it and possibly comment on it. Okay, if you want to get a copy from me, let me know.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Please.
Is this for a master plan, or?
No, this is, they had a grant to do a 8-part plan for environmental and other things in the valley. And they actually did 4 parts of it so far that are out for comment. The two that really impact us are the green infrastructure and the clean energy, because both of those propose a lot of actions by planning boards. These are all voluntary, but there's a laundry list of things that they would love to have planning boards do.
Does it have anything to do with the green energy
Yeah.
bylaw?
Oh, it has to do with green communities, it has to do with transit-oriented development, it has to do with the smart growth, so-called, which is basically build everything in the middle, put everybody in the middle of town,
That's right.
and make the rest of the town fields and forests.
Right.
Okay. I have sent my comments in already.
Can we have copies of your comments?
I'd be happy to give you copies to distribute, Robin. You have a good laugh at them.
No,
But,
I wouldn't.
The 2 others that have been issued, one is on food security, which I don't know really impacts planning boards, but I can send you that as well. And brownfields, which does not affect our town directly yet, because we're not a high brownfields town. Brownfields is industrial sites that have been abandoned and that are contaminated and need to be cleaned up before they can be redeveloped.
And we basically just have one,
And it's being worked on.
Which one's that?
Package machinery?
package machine.
Package, yeah.
But is that all industrial, or is it old landfills and stuff like that?
It's
think it's all
industrial,
Okay.
industrial. And there are actually a number of others identified in town, mostly along the railroad.
Yeah.
But they're not high priority. What they're looking at mostly is Holyoke and Springfield and Chicopee, like the face paint plant in Chicopee or whatever that was.
Yes.
And the Westinghouse plant, which is gone now in Springfield.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it basically is real, the
Yeah.
old, big manufacturing companies that
Yeah.
just abandoned the buildings.
And how do you deal with that so you can redevelop it and have somebody else come in? Because nobody's gonna wanna come in and clean it up. It's
Right.
gonna cost too much.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's-
Okay,
Right.
but we're not even mentioned in that plan. They're not gonna get to us until the next century, probably,
Yeah,
because of
for
all
that.
the major issues in the cities. So that one I ignored, but the other, and the food security one is, I'll just say I had a lot of negative comments on it. They would like us to grow at least 50% of the food that the valley consumes within the valley, which is totally unrealistic.
I would think, yeah.
But, this is a goal. My problem is that when you put a goal like that, it drives policy. And you make bad policy decisions by driving for unrealistic goals, like locking up land or
Right.
trying to lock up land, which could be a problem. And there's a lot of just real jargon in it that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. My favorite is that teaching people to cook is increasing their capacity for food security. I had to laugh at that. Okay, why don't you say you're gonna teach them to cook? Well, we can't say that because that's not the right words to use.
Gotta be politically correct.
Okay, so, anyway, but the 2 that are important are green infrastructure, which is all about getting rid or upgrading the stormwater systems and requiring new stormwater systems to basically do what we do in subdivisions now, which is not discharge directly to streams and get the stuff cleaned up, but designing roads so that you get rid of catch basins and put in swales instead and things like that. Some of which is realistic and some of which is not. But again, reports like this drive policy decisions, and you can make bad policy decisions based on bad assumptions and assertions in plans like this. So I think it's important that they be aware that not everybody thinks the way they do. Or maybe you think the way they do, in which case you can send a comment saying, this is great. I'm not saying how you should think. But I will get you the plans in email, and you can have fun looking at them.
That'd be great.
I think the more comments, the better, too, because.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
Typically,
important
they
that-
get 0 comments.
Yeah, I think it's important that,
Okay.
the people, the way you feel about it is really brought forth,
Yeah.
because they're really driving a
'Cause
lot of these points.
What happens is you usually don't see these, nobody knows these things are there, they finalize them, they put them out there, and then other organizations use that to lobby in Boston for legal changes and regulation changes, and also use these reports to justify grants for studies for stuff that may not be really useful, but because it's in a report that says this is something we ought to be doing, then somebody's going to get money to do it, whether or not it's productive. So I think it's important that they get some input from people who are actually on things like planning boards and out there talking to people, as opposed to just the liberal organizations that serve on their advisory committees. So that's all I had. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I know we had brought up at a previous meeting detention basin, retention basins. At some point in time when we bring that back up, I would ask that I have an engineer that would like to come in for a discussion on it with us. And again, I'm not sure if it's anytime soon, but I'm just thinking down the road, just to have additional input. I am not an engineer, I don't pretend to be, I just would like a whole discussion on it.
Okay, it's my understanding that the Board of Public Works has also reopened the issue of detention basins at their most recent meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
And that they're also interested in this. I think it would be great if, when we open this up, we could get somebody from the Board of Public Works to come to the meeting at the same time, so that we've got,
I think the whole board.
well, if we could, yeah, it could be great
we
to
set-
schedule a joint meeting
I think so.
between us and the Board of Public Works to discuss this, rather than have us talk to somebody and them talk to somebody
Right.
and just have no communication. I think it's, if they're willing to do it, I think we should be willing to do it.
I
Do a
think
little,
their meetings are the same night as ours.
They vary. Sometimes they're on Mondays.
yeah,
They usually start at 5 o'clock, so they're usually done by 5:15.
right.
We
But-
didn't set any specific time at the last one for
Yeah,
further
well,
discussion,
we-
right? Okay,
We've got
a lot coming up.
a lot coming up between now and town meeting, and we're missing 2 meetings because of elections. So, I think that we should probably, and since Board of Public Works is just starting to talk about this, and is not gonna have something for, well, they are bringing something to town meeting, but it's not specifically around detention basins.
Just stormwater management.
Stormwater management.
Same thing that they had last year.
I think that maybe after town meeting would be a good time to do that. It'll give us time to prepare and then time to prepare. It's not something that has to be done overnight.
Right.
And I've also, there are supposedly model subdivision regulations for green infrastructure that are either being worked on or about to be released. And I'd like us to have those
Great.
prior to this happening. I've requested them from PVPC, and I was told they're not quite ready yet for prime time, but as soon as they are, we'll get copies of them. So,
PVPC's put in together?
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a model.
It's a model.
You gotta
Thank you.
start somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to see what they're proposing before we charge off on our own, but I think soon after town meeting, if we are not overwhelmed, we've got massage parlors out of the way, we've got home daycares out of the way, I don't see anything else huge looming on the horizon at the moment, although something will, I'm sure. Could be a good time to get into that. Does that make sense?
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah.
One other thing, I don't know if you saw the news article about the grant. It was really a very poorly written
Yeah.
news article, and it basically, starred Agawam. East Long Meadow is just as half in as Agawam is, and the monies that we've looked for in that grant are to, not just to put locks on the housing authorities' doors, like the report said, but to look to help some of the residents redo their homes, that, how we talked about the targeted area. So that is all part of that grant. We haven't heard anything yet about it, but there's more to it than that article. I was very disappointed in the article. It made it sound like, East Long Meadow had nothing to do with it, but we're 50% in with Agawam, so we're hoping. I don't know. But I just wanted to let you know that we did work very hard on that to try and at least get, some of the stuff that you guys had mentioned last year when we did the grant, so.
Okay.
Good.
That's it for me.
Hearing no other comments, meeting's adjourned.
Motion?
Do I have a motion? You got a motion? Okay.
Got a motion?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Ben.